Okay, and we're live, and it's very exciting to be on YouTube live. Welcome to Viz Review for week 32, the first one on YouTube, live streamed. And hello, Charlie, who's also with me.
Hello, yeah, it's a bit weird, but yeah, good to be on a new platform, and hopefully we can spread our love of Makeover Monday to more.
Absolutely. So people can see us now. Hopefully people will recognize us. I'm slightly drenched from the constant rain that I had to run through to get back home. Bit of a downpour, but we're both sweating, I think, because it's been a heat wave.
Yeah, it's horribly hot.
Both nice and shiny.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is exciting. So, for those who haven't participated in Viz Review before or haven't done YouTube Live, pretty much like us, in the live chat, please feel free to talk to one another, to make comments, to ask questions, and we'll try to keep track of those as we go. Just bear in mind that your comments or what you see is a bit delayed from when we actually speak. So by the time we get to your comments, we might have already moved on, so we have to backtrack. We've got an hour, but we're not going to get cut off afterwards. So we're really excited to test this out. And we're going to go through the Twitter feed for the...
That was me.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be a technical issue. It's going to be me.
We're going to go through the Twitter feed for the Viz Review hashtag. And I'm just going to bring that up. So bear with me 1 second. Actually, before we do that, let's look at slide number 2 in the slide deck, which is the Viz that we're going to review today, or that we're making over. So this was the original I posted together with an article for people to read through if they wanted to. Quite a simple Viz and a really small data set. We had, 6 rows, 2 columns, and people went all out. So we're going to look at their Vizes. And the way we do this is by going through this collection on Twitter. Now, what I did for this week, and Charlie's going to do it for his weeks, is we're not going to just review everything in the hashtag because it's too many to cover in the hour. So I've tried to collect all sorts of different charts. So based on the hashtag, looking at bar charts, line charts, whatever came up, and trying to find a variety, because what goes for one bar chart typically goes for the other bar charts as well. So we want to give you feedback on as many different types of charts as possible. And so there's a collection. What I've also filtered out, and some of you may have seen this last week, is the Viz Review hashtags that also had the hashtag DataFamFeedback. Now, there are 2 initiatives going for feedback, and while we're happy to cross over and we have talked to Sam and we're all good, there is no issues there. We just want to make sure that we cover in Viz Review the tweets and the Vizes that people don't get other feedback for. So if you're asking for DataFam feedback, you can get that, and that's fine. But we're not then also going to cover your Viz here because someone else might then miss out on feedback. So just pick which one you would like. You can change every week, totally up to you. Charlie, do you think we should start top to bottom, bottom to top? It doesn't really matter to me, but let me know what you think.
I think let's go starting at the bottom because it's a curious one straight away.
Okay, let me scroll all the way down. We have a long list to get through. Okay, so yes, this is the curious one because it says, so hi Shiva, it's his first submission for Makeover Monday, his first Tableau submission, and I'm like, how is this your first one? How did you even create this chart? Let's have a look. Okay.
I didn't even know what to call this one when I first saw it. So you've got these sort of lasso-y shapes over on the left-hand side where I guess the peak of the highest one is the 32% of people who responded saying that they enjoyed the flexible schedule, and then it drops down. And yeah, I mean, I was kind of impressed by the maths that allowed Shiva to come up with this chart type, which I've not really seen before, but I couldn't really see how it tied into everything. So it all sort of draws together under the figure of the guy sat on his laptop, but I couldn't really see what it was supposed to be. I don't know if it's pretending it's like electrical leads or what, but I don't know what your thoughts are.
Oh, good point. I hadn't even thought of trying to find a meaning behind where the bars go, or where the lines go, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, like you say, it's impressive how he created this chart, because, I mean, I didn't download it to check, but at the top of my head, I can't quite figure it out. It reminds me of the circular bar charts, just maybe because of those rounded ends, but yeah, not really sure. And I think the limitation of it is that he has to then draw additional lines to label it, because otherwise, you don't know what label belongs to which line. So I wonder, because he has curves in the couch image and some of the other elements in there, but I wonder if a nice little bar chart that would fill up exactly the same space, probably a vertical one so he could put the labels inside, whether that would work just as well. Because if you look at that horizontal red line at the bottom and you have the picture frame on the right side, they're all very, like straight lines with sharp edges, and picking up that shape into a bar chart could work quite well.
Yeah, I think it's a very creative thing, but yeah, it's just a bit difficult because I guess people won't necessarily know what they're looking at when they see this. And then there's smaller issues like if we say the top peak of that ability to have a flexible schedule is 32%, you would perhaps imagine that theoretically the height of the whole viz should be the equivalent of 100% to give you a sense of its position relative to what the maximum could be. So it's questionable whether that sort of aspect ratio kind of thing should be in consideration, but it's definitely very creative, and it's the first time I've seen it.
Yeah, agreed. One thing I would suggest is that the source and the design, so Shiva, your name and the source, I would make that more visible, making it white or maybe the dark blue from the guy's pants, because don't hide who you are and that you created it. I think that needs to come out more, because it's extremely hard to see that grey on the light blue background.
Okay, should we move on?
Cool. Yes, we should. And I do want to do a quick shout out to the people who've dialed in. We've got 50 people right now. I think some of them might still be stuck on Bright Talk and just finding their way here. But thanks, Rodrigo, for tuning in, and Caesar, and I think I see Agatha.
And Evelina's up there as well, and Agatha's there. So it's good. And apparently the sound's good, better than Bright Talk, so we're winning.
Good. That's excellent. I do have a nice microphone, for like a proper podcasting microphone now that I got given, and I'm really excited that people can talk to each other during this, because in the past they could only ask us questions and we didn't even know who asked the question. Now we can see their names, we can interact with them, they can interact with one another, which is great given that they already do on Twitter. So this one is from I missed the name. Who was it?
Krishangi.
Yeah, Krishangi. Okay, so here, what do you think of the title being kind of in the middle left side of the viz? Is it prominent enough for you?
It's a bit shuffled about, and another thing that this has picked up is, I know that in the original there was this reference of 98% of people want to still have the option of working remotely, and remember this data was all pre-pandemic, but it's almost like there's three different titles here, so there isn't really that focus, because the top right my eye's drawn towards, and then the 98% is big. The speech marks around would you like to work remotely, that's quite prominent, and then I guess the proper title's down on the left, so it's quite hard to know where to look first of all. So yeah, it's a little bit peculiar.
Yeah, I think I have to say, like, at first glance, I really like it. It reminds me a bit of an annual report style design. I do like those pill shapes or rounded bars. The font inside is just a bit small, because everything else is really easy to read, which I love, especially because I'm not wearing glasses, because while they make me maybe look a bit more intellectual, they also reflect the screen, so it's not that great for video. But I think in those bars, the font should be a bit larger, and I agree with you that it's pulling my attention into different directions. And if the top was a bit smaller, but the title on the left maybe a bit larger, I think that could work quite well. Or moving the text from the top below the chart could also be an option.
Yeah, one thing I've got to say, if I'm being honest, that I don't like about it is we've got these bars extending to the right, which all end in the same sort of position. So you've got 32%, 26%, 21%, they're all ending in the same position. So the labels on the right are all in the same place. That feels a bit weird to me.
True.
Visually it looks good, but it almost implies that everything closes at the same point. So that's probably something I'd pull out from it, because I think it would make things stand out a lot more if those secondary trails weren't there.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And thanks to everyone for your comments on the audio and stuff. So it seems to work well. I think my audio changes because sometimes I talk while I lean over. I've got 3 screens set up here, and your comments are on the far right screen. So I might have just been a bit away, but I'm now literally spitting into the microphone. So hopefully that's better. But overall, really cool viz. I like it. And maybe you can just, tweak it a bit and see what works. Okay, let's jump to our next one. And this is Aditya. And this one I found interesting because it picks up, I think, the colors from the original, from that image, and works it into donuts. Now, what's your stance on donuts, Charlie? I mean, donut charts. Donuts eating is a different thing.
I don't mind them. So, pie charts and donuts have all got a place, and they've got a place when you don't have too many segments. But part of the reason that things like that work, at least in my opinion, is that they're quite compact. And so it sort of doesn't make sense to me to deconstruct a 6-segment donut to take up 6 times the space. So we've basically got the same thing broken down, and with each segment again starting from 12 o'clock. So you've got, it just feels like it takes up an awful lot of space. And then you've got this problem where all the donuts on the left-hand side are much thinner than the ones on the right-hand side. So it almost implies again that their segments, even though they differ percentage by percentage, that they're even less because they've got such thin donutty bits. So yeah, that stands out.
I agree, and I think this would be an option where if you could somehow, Aditya, if you somehow work into your text or description the different benefits with the color legend so that people hover over the top donut and in the middle, and this is maybe giving away a bit what I have planned for mine that I just need to finish, so that you have just a single donut, and as you hover, it highlights the segment that people want to look at, and in the middle maybe have the big percentage because you would save a lot of space. And you could maybe even have a call out that explains a bit more what does it mean, the ability to have a flexible schedule. I don't know how much there was in the article for that, but just a suggestion. So otherwise, if you want to stick to your layout, like Charlie suggested, making each donut the same size, but then also I would put the segment where it is in the original donut at the top. So starting from wherever your starting point is after the next segment, so that it doesn't become confusing. And then removing some of these lines. I think there's some borders and axis lines still in there.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm trying to keep up with all the comments as well. You guys are very chatty, which is great. But maybe, if you have a question, maybe make it all caps or something so that we can spot it easily. And feel free to continue your chats as well.
Okay, so the next one is Cindy Yen.
Okay, so this one, I like the picture because it's one of the few pictures of working from home that doesn't have a hipster bloke in it, with beard and glasses and that kind of stuff. And it just makes it look like a work from home kind of situation. So why remote working works. My first suggestion would be to make the title a lot bigger. The viz seems to be a bit of an odd shape because it's the white background is wider than the actual viz and image and title. So making that more compact or making your viz bigger, and yeah, a nice big prominent title. And I would include a bit of a description of that survey, especially because it was pre-COVID pandemic. Maybe that's relevant to include. What do you think of the bars?
I'm just a bit confused by the way they've been categorized, because obviously the data wasn't categorized at the start. And I think I said you asked a comment on Twitter about what your own thoughts are on the lockdown, and I think everything interlinks so much. So when we've got here this orangey colour that says flexible schedule is in this more flexibility category, it almost ties in with the creates time category. So the actual categorization feels a bit unnecessary for me. I don't think it particularly adds much because kind of everything creates time or gives you more flexibility. So I don't know that particularly brings extra to the viz.
Yeah, agreed. And especially because I would understand if oh no, I forgot the name. If Cindy had explained then things around more flexibility, maybe introduced some additional points for those two categories, but it seems a bit like, at least for us who've worked with the data and read through the article ourselves, it's like, there was nothing really extra for this, so it seems a bit odd. In terms of design, I would definitely get rid of the grid lines, get rid of the borders, just to make it a bit cleaner and less. It looks a bit unfinished because the top is nice and clean, but then there's suddenly all these lines that make it a bit boxy. So getting rid of those, I think, will help, and including your name as the author.
Yeah. Rodrigo's doing some good cheerleading in the YouTube chat.
Absolutely. And okay, while I jump to the next viz, I do want to encourage everyone to actually subscribe to Andy's channel, not just for Andy's amazing videos, but also because then you can set up notifications for these live streams. So you will be, I guess, notified maybe on YouTube. I don't know if it works by email, but that we have set up a new live stream, and then you can click on waiting and you get an email notification or reminder that the live stream is coming. Which is an improvement over BrightTalk, where we had to get you to register for every single webinar because they don't have a webinar series function. So hopefully that makes it a bit easier for everyone, especially on the days when we might have to be a bit flexible with time. But that's also a great benefit of YouTube, because we can set it for whenever and for however long, because BrightTalk sometimes were booked out, we couldn't get any slots, and then you only have certain start times and certain increments. So we'll see how this goes, but so far people seem to be happy. Waterfall chart. I'll let you start on this one.
Yeah, so these charts are the bane of my life, because I work in commercial finance, and it's every single presentation has these things going in. And I know that Andy used this and he's bound to be listening. So I'll upset him, but say I just don't think it's necessarily the best way of presenting information in this case, but that's because I'm stuck in this world of commercial finance. But I'm used to seeing waterfall charts used to show, I don't know, you open with a budget of this, and these different events drive a shortfall in revenue or a surplus, and this, that, and the other, and you end up at the end position. So I'm used to seeing waterfalls showing like a flow of financials from a start state to an end state. And with this, it's just 100% of respondents plotted. So it just doesn't feel like it makes sense to me. I don't think that seeing 32% with the 26% next to it, but above it and starting from the start of the 32 allows you to actually understand that gap between the 32 and the 26%, if I'm articulating that at all well. So it's just why I personally wouldn't have chosen this chart type, but the person who's created this has obviously been inspired by what Andy's done, and has done a pretty good job on it.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. I wasn't wild about this chart, and I think the explanation is also not quite hitting the point. 79% of what people like about working from home. It's not 79% of what they like. It's a total of 79% of the respondents list either of these top three benefits, because I think every person just gets one top benefit, and then they split up the 100% of respondents across these 6 different benefits. So it's not 79% of what they like, because then they're like, oh, 80% of what I like is this, and 20% of what I like is this. No one would respond like that. It's the percentage of respondents who picked either flexible schedule, flexible location, or no commute as their top benefit. So that is semantics, but I think it's important because currently it's not really correct. I think it's great that Kamal has, used this visualization to try and to learn something new and got inspired clearly and tweeted that out. But I also think for me, a waterfall chart, while I'm not in financials, it always seems like something cumulative, and I would think, oh, this would be probably more suitable if I'm one person and these are 6 parts of what I do or what I like or something. But because these are separate boxes or separate categories, I don't think it really works for me, because the chart type to me seems to suggest cumulative in a different kind of context.
Yeah. So you're being asked if you could zoom your screen in a little bit.
I can, and So I just see that Caesar, he suggested that he set his, in his settings for YouTube, he set it to HD because it was by default only 240 pixels. So people, please do that. We have tried to set a really high bit rate, I think it's called. There's all this stuff we have to learn now. But hopefully the resolution is fine. Everyone can see that it's nice and crisp. When I zoom in, it does get a bit more blurry for images and for labels, not the font, but some of the labels get blurry. Okay, shall we move on?
Yes.
Okay.
So next we've got Ashik.
Yes, because I also thought this was an interesting one, and I think I had something specific that I wanted to say about it. So let's bring it up, and I will try to make sure that I zoom in every time. Okay, yeah, this definitely needs to zoom in.
Okay, so benefits of remote work with a subheader saying that this is prior to the pandemic, which is useful because I think it's worth calling out because I was a bit lazy and didn't really read everything when I started looking at it and assumed it had been a survey carried out when this stuff all kicked off, but it hadn't. So good bit of diligence by actually checking what your data was, which I need to learn from. It's a bar chart, and they're really spaced out, and that's the thing that jumps out to me straight away, is that it's just got lots of very narrow bars with whopping gaps between them. And it just seems like it creates an awful lot of black space in this case rather than white space. But I'm a bit freaked out by the gap between the bars, to be quite honest.
It just looks. It makes me think. The first impression was, is it a tent? Is it a building? Because then we've got these lines going kind of like steps, and then the dotted lines going to the right. And I think the bars need to come closer together and not be so spaced out. And again, we have blah, blah, blah contribute to 79% of the benefits, and that's not the right way to say it. It's 79% of respondents listed one of those as their benefit. So just making sure you word that correctly, because I think it would be very difficult to assign a percentage to something categorical like that. I mean, if you said, 80% of my income, it's like, we can easily measure that. But 80% of my happiness, a bit more difficult. So I'm hoping that's understandable, that 79% of the benefit is just not the right way to word it. And I hope we don't have Andy to blame for this wording. Okay. Anything else on this one?
Is there a reason why people are calling out the 79%? Because it just feels weird to add up a bunch of categories and say, there's that 79. So why are we not just looking at 58% of the first two? It doesn't stand out as a particularly exciting number for me.
Maybe it's the 80-20.
Yeah, but then, the 80-20 rule when you've only got 6 categories feels a bit strange as well. So I'd understand it if it was, a big Pareto chart and multi-categories or loads of countries or something. But for 6 responses, it just feels a bit strange.
Yeah, agreed. So maybe Ashik has an explanation for that. Okie dokie, let's move on. So here we have now gauges. And this is Tenvia, and he learned from, which one is that? From Ken Flailage. I can't tell I think it's Kev is the other handle for Kevin. Okay, so let's zoom in. Oh, this should be nice and big now on people's screen. Okay, working remotely. So this is, while it's not a long title or, it's just a couple of words, but it sets the scene. We know, okay, this is about working remotely. Apart from working in sweatpants, what are the things people like about working from home? Would you go with capitalizing every word except from, or would you just go sentence case?
No, I just do sentence case. It seems to be something that happens in some sort of journalism circles and it catches on, but it just looks it's just a bit bad, isn't it? So I think just in terms of nicely typeface stuff, we should just try and stick to sentence case.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there was one question from Rodrigo on the previous chart, so the bars and whether people need tooltips. So I'm a big fan of switching them off when all the information is visible and the tooltip doesn't add anything. By all means, switch it off, because it might actually confuse people as they hover. They might get a bit of a fright. Okay, so gauges. What's your thought? We had donuts before. I guess a gauge is a half donut. What do you think of these ones?
So they're half as good as a donut then. So I think they've got they've got use cases where they add a different sort of look to things, and they're pretty easy to read. But again, when you've got it feels weird for me to defragment when you could have a single view within a single donut, nicely labeled. It feels strange to me to have 6 different gauges when we've got just 6 responses to one questionnaire. It just feels like it's quite a waste of space.
Yeah, there's a lot of space. I also don't understand how they're sorted because there's space because these are basically donuts that are just not showing the bottom half. But they're not sorted in alphabetical order, from what I can tell.
They're not going down and across and down.
Yeah, because the 3 is like if the 3 and the 7% was swapped, I'd be like, okay, we're going like in a zigzag pattern, but I don't really understand. And I think, I mean, this data set, to be honest, I think a bar chart is like the best option, the simplest option. Now, I'm all for learning new chart types. It's just something that we want to point out, which one is the most effective, but also looking at, well, how did you do the one that you did, and is there something we can suggest? One thing I would do in terms of design is to move the titles a bit further up because they're really squished against the donut.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna, I mean, it's completely cool. We're not like advising people never to experiment, and it's totally fine to do that. I just think when you're going to experiment, just try and make sure you nail absolutely everything else. So like the order on this one is a little bit strange. I don't know what it is. So just tick that box, make that right. Sort out the at the top where the text is, because it's probably a bit wordy. So as well as getting stuff into the right sort of position, try and trim it down a little bit, because I don't think it's such a simple data set that it feels a shame to complicate it by having big explanations or complicated chart types.
Yeah, agreed. Oh, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Ah, good. Okay, it just sounded like you were suddenly cut off. All good. Okay, I think that will give Tanvir a bit of stuff to think about. And then we have Mike Summons. Now, Mike has been participating quite a bit. And with his viz, what stood out for me is there's a lot of images, but where's the data? And I had to kind of look for it. We have donuts again, but they're not easily distinguishable as donuts. And I just wanted to see what we can recommend to Michael for this viz.
It's good because the data is a little bit buried in there. It's probably taken quite a lot of work to get everything so neatly lined up and slice these sort of arcs out of the images. So I'm not underestimating the amount of work that's gone into it. It's kind of, I guess it's maybe the sort of thing you'd see in a train station poster or in an airport, something like that. So it's kind of got that infographic kind of feel to it. And maybe that is all right for the data to be a little bit hidden, but I don't think you could really make 1 or 2 quick amends to this to make the data more prominent, because those images are so quite dominant. So yeah, I think if you were to go down the route of making data prominent, you'd almost have to start it again. But
yeah,
there's a lot of work gone into it, that's for sure.
I wonder if you remove the labels and put them to the side somewhere or above, and you put the same kind of grayish haze over every picture so that they're just a bit more dulled, and then have all the donuts on one side, or make them as bars, or just make them big as numbers. I wonder if that would help, but I'm not sure. I think, like Charlie said, this could be something maybe on a website or so, but I find the data is so hard to see. Also because like there's big numbers, there's these benefits, but I'm not connecting the two because I don't know, they don't visually connect it, because then the words are on the picture, but then the number is in this black and white donut that I can't quite determine what it is. So I guess it's my struggle. And also all the donuts start at 12 o'clock going either to the right or to the left. which is the challenge we had previously as well. Okay, now there's a question from Dimitri, whom I actually met in Seattle at a talk that I gave there at the Tableau office. So great to have you tune in, Dimitri. Good morning. And he asked if there is a way that when you hover over a viz, and actually let's go back to that previous one, because I think that's where it happened. And I want to just, I need to go to the link, make it very obvious. And I hope Andy is still listening, because I'm going to volunteer him to show this. So when you hover over a viz and there are elements like in this gauge, we just want to see the gauge. But when I hover, I can see the wedge, I can see the inner circle, and I can see the bottom half. And Dimitri said, is there a way to actually disable that? And I know that sometimes when you hover over something or you click, it has that kind of blue shading. And Andy has shown me how to get rid of the blue shading. Andy, if you haven't yet, can you make a video about that? And also, if you know how to disable these kind of selection border things, maybe you can make a video about that as well. That would be fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay. Next up, we have Tyler Cannon, a name that I haven't really heard before for Makeover Monday. So hopefully Tyler is tuning in right now.
Okay, so so Tyler's picked up some data that I didn't even realise was in there. I must have been in some rush this week, but so he's picked up the bits that people are liking, but also the elements that people aren't liking, which is quite interesting. So this is the first time I've seen that side of the data set.
That was not in the data. That is additional data. So all that is in the report, but I didn't provide that, so that's optional. Just to
an extra brownie point for Tyler for doing that. So yeah, I like these bar charts. So I can't remember who it is that does it. Someone's bound to know, but there's someone who's extensively looked at how many different ways can you create a bar chart and what can you do to make it still a bar chart, but quite just a slight little different take on the same idea. So Tyler's done this one with labeling above the bars, which is quite a nice idea. Because it gets you around the problem if you're trying to label it inside the bar, when you've got a short little section like other with only 3%, usually the label will spill out the other side of the bar and it looks a bit clunky. So, but this gets around that, so it's quite nice and clear. And then I guess my question would be, because I can't tell just by glancing at it, is the 20% on the negative side, is that the same length as the 32 on the positive side? And if it is, that probably needs balancing out just so it's in sync proportionately with the left-hand side.
Yeah.
But it's nice, and it's one where the images have been incorporated in a way which they're very much a secondary piece. So I didn't actually notice them until sort of taking in the wider look around the viz as a whole. So they might not add much, but they're certainly not distracting from the overall design.
Yeah, I agree. What I would suggest is, because my first thought when I looked at this is it's something about boys and girls because of the blue and pink in combination. Why not pick up some of the colors, but maybe a lighter hue of what's in the images? So maybe that pale purple and then the really intense turquoise, for example, just so that it looks a bit more harmonious. And I have to say, yeah, I also like the images. I think the one on the right, I don't know if they're the same height, or the one on the right looks a bit higher in terms of alignment. And yeah, definitely fixing the axis. And what do you think, Charlie, about shifting the benefits to the right and the struggle to the left? Because they currently kind of seem to be competing. But for me, logically, the negative thing would be on the left going left, and on the benefits on the right side going right.
Yeah, no, I think that's a sensible thing to do. And the only other thing that stands out for me is that 98% is massive. It's like if there's anything that it blends in all right, but if there was anything that's going to distract me and catch my eye, it might be just the size of that 98%. It's huge. And I don't know that it needs to be at all. Would you just keep it the same size as the rest of that subtitle?
Yeah, probably. Or make it even bigger and take up like both rows, or like, that kind of top corner. Not sure. Maybe something also to play with a little bit.
Yeah, but apart from that, I think the only omissions are I can't see the data source cited and Tyler's name splashed on there, so everyone knows what he's doing. So
yes. Oh, and
good.
one last comment is that subtitle. I don't know if you said that. It's in pink, so it looks like it's part of the struggle. But this is actually 98% of people saying, "I want to do more of this." So
Yes,
I would have thought that should be in blue.
Yeah, there's an argument that you might align more of the text. So you probably want to make remote work a neutral color, and then maybe have what is your biggest struggle and the labels on that side potentially the same color as the bar, or maybe make all of the labels and stuff neutral. So yeah, just figure out how to balance up that text color.
Okay, sounds good. And just to the really cool people that are chatting right now on this live chat, I get the sense that there are a few people in there that haven't seen Viz Review before, and maybe this is their first time. So if this is your first time watching Viz Review, please maybe post a thumbs up or some kind of something in the comments, so we can just get a bit of a sense of how many people are actually seeing this for the first time, because there are a few veterans, experienced people who know how this works, but some people seem to be like, oh, I didn't know this is how it worked. So yeah.
Yeah, and if anyone's got any questions, while I won't reply to them now because I'm a very professional person, what I might do is scan through later this evening over here and reply to stuff, just if anyone wants to understand how maybe they get selected for it and stuff like that.
Yes, and I will promise that I'll update the website as well, because the website still has the old Bright Talk process, but I didn't want to change it until we're sure that it actually works. That's why we also left the Bright Talk webinars up. They are now just going to be up there as placeholders. Okay, so this one stood out to me, I have to say, from Rado, or Radoslav. I think Rado is what he goes for, because it's so crisp and it's a bit Samo-esque, and I haven't seen Samo in a while, so I hope people still remember Samo Droll. This reminds me a bit of his style.
Yeah, you're dead right, aren't you? It's so reminiscent of what Samo does, and it's almost in the same way as when you look at Samo's work, you can't really find fault with it. It's hard to find an issue with it. There's lots of nice white space. There's no clutter. It's so efficient. There's no overuse of words. I think if I was to be picky about anything, it's that variety of size and color in the main title. Mm-hmm. I think possibly I'd standardize that, but the bars underneath and the labeling, everything like that, just is totally how I like looking at this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I like that Rado has taken the liberty to actually change the aliases for the benefits and say, removing the ability to, but just say flexible schedule, because I think that's clear enough for people. So yeah, well done. And this is a great example of using white or empty space effectively. Yeah,
and it also backs up the fact that this is a simple data set. Don't be afraid of presenting simple data a simple way, because actually you're almost doing it a disservice by creating extra cognitive load with loads of color and glitz and glamour.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's cool to see we've got about 10 or maybe a dozen people who are here for the first time, or, the second time. So those first few impressions from Viz Review, so that's great. And I have to say, I'm really enjoying this YouTube setup, and it feels almost like a studio. You should see my screens here. It's a bit wild. Next we have Ajinkia.
Yeah, I'd say.
And a lollipop chart, which we hadn't seen yet this week. So let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, you go first.
So honestly, the instinctive first impression is that I'm quite confused. So there's color at the top, sort of running horizontally and vertically. So it almost makes me think that there's going to be like a Sankey kind of relationship, a flow between different color points. Mm-hmm. But that's not there. And then we've got these lollipops which aren't spaced out evenly, because they seem to be pinned to a stacked bar that's running vertically, so that the others 3% is in that narrowest bar and flexible schedules in the biggest bar, but then the flexibility to work from any location is like the third bottom one, so there's no sort order. So I can't figure out the logical arrangement of things, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, so we've got the vertical bar that is a stacked bar rather than like a colorful border. But yeah, I'm not sure if this is the best use of space, because there's a lot of space being taken up by these lollipops that could have just been done in the vertical bar, the stacked bar, or with a simple bar chart. And I'm confused by the colors because they're not then what do you call it? Repeated in the lollipop. So I'm not quite sure this works.
No. And you've got this, like, the extension from the title at the top where you've got these equal sized blocks of colour. And again, that sort of seems to clash with the idea, because that's almost implying actually all these categories have the same response rate, but then you've got the actual response rate on the left. So as a minimum, to make improvements on this, I would consider getting rid of the stuff to the right of the title, just having that as a single title bar at the top. And then I would sort out the sort order on the stack bar, so it's in descending order or ascending order, depending on how you want to do it. And like Eva said, I'd get those lollipops probably the same color as their source stack bar, just to give it some consistency.
Yeah. Okay. And okay, and then we have another new chart, and it says neon bar charts. I'm not sure if that relates to the kind of halo around the individual bars. To me, it looks like those, what do you call them? Like aerobics stepper things that you see in a gym.
I've never been in a gym. Yeah, I can't help you.
I did dance classes in uni, and they had those stepper things where you stack these boxes and you put a horizontal thing across to step on. And anyway, could also be discs of some sort, but it's really straining my eyes, this like glow effect. So I would love to see this just like plain bars that don't have a halo or glow, and just give me a plain simple bar.
Yeah, you're right. That neon effect is it's like those things that you sometimes see shared on Facebook that say, "Look at this," and something will emerge, and you see, like, I don't know, some shape or something emerging from this mist. So yeah, I think it's definitely just makes my eyes feel a bit fuzzy. So I think even if we didn't have that fuzzy effect, do you think this one strays too far down the line of visual garnish? So there's a lot of images and different textures and different font types. It just feels quite heavy.
Yeah, I think given how much working from home is discussed in the media, I don't know if we need another reminder of these kind of stock images that are a MacBook, a cup of some sort of drink, a notebook. Like, they're always the same type of images, and they seem almost a bit cliche. So I think this could look really fine with the picture removed, making the title nice and prominent, and that subtitle, but also a bit of an explanation of the survey. And I think that would be quite sufficient. And then also putting the credentials at the bottom nicely centered, because they're a little bit off to the left. I'm not quite sure how they're aligned, but focusing on making the elements that you use to show the data, making those like flawless is more important than adding visual garnish.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Priyanka next.
Priyanka, okay. I have some more YouTube things planned for Makeover Monday that I'm quite excited about now, so hopefully that all works out. If it does, you will all see by the end of this week. Okay, I'll let you start.
Is this the first waffle of the day? I think it is the first waffle of the day. So this is kind of like, this is why when we had these sort of donuts and gauge charts, which were sort of fragmented earlier, it's why I sort of bemoan the fact that they took up a lot of space, because here, like a waffle where there's no smashing it apart to break it into its component parts, it's just so compact. So everything's there, it's quite nice and neat. The sort order of everything is logical. Well, or is it actually? The sort order is a bit funky, so
I think it's the percentage. So it's descending order from highest to lowest percentage, which is not bad.
Yeah, but then we've got, so the ability to work from home is bottom right rather than bottom left. So there's something slightly off with the sort order, but it's just a neat little chart. And again, this is one where we've got an icon or an image there, and I wonder if it would look a bit. I'm trying to work out if the image adds in on this occasion, because it would be just a big waffle chart otherwise. I don't know if you think it adds any particular welcome distraction. I don't know if you can have a welcome distraction, but you know what I mean? It adds balance.
I want to try something. I'm just being very brave, and in this first version of YouTube Live, I'm going to change the color scheme in a live little Tableau demo here, because I want to pick up the colors from the image, because I think that is what bothers me, that there's so many different colors. So the biggest percentage is, takes up the most space, obviously. So I'm going to pick a blue color, because that is the biggest color in that visualization. So let me grab just these colors and see what we can do. The next, I like the pink as well, and then maybe a lighter color, maybe not white, but do we have a lighter pink? Yeah. I like alternating dark and lighter shades. If you go through the color palettes, you can see that Tableau do like dark shade then lighter shade, just to get a bit of nice contrast. And maybe we can pick up the yellow. And what about I don't quite like the brown.
Maybe black for the commute or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's have a look. We could always make the black a little bit of a dark blue instead. Let's see what that looks like. Because now, if I make this like big and I zoom, I can't zoom in here, but hopefully just people get the overall impression. I'm still not crazy about having so many colors, but at least now the colors and the image kind of go together.
Yeah.
Something to keep in mind, and maybe just to consider. If you don't like it, that's fine. I just wanted to see what it looks like, if you can bring those, because the other colors also they had no relation to the image, and they were just not the greatest combo. I think like a dull purple and a brown is just not that exciting. Okay. All right, we're back. So Priyanka, hopefully that was something helpful. I think otherwise, in terms of how the design is laid out, so the image, I mean, I think it's okay. I don't need it, but it doesn't bother me. And I think there's still space for the data. It should just be a bit more obvious that this is actually data. So maybe the legend, maybe there could be a bit more text about, this is what people cited as the top benefits or something like that. Okay.
Right, the next one is Vignesh.
Okay.
Sorry for butchering everyone's names, but we'll improve.
Did you see that on LinkedIn now people can do the pronunciation of their name as a little audio recording, and you can click on it and it tells them? Yeah.
Well, so this one, it's very purple. So we've got, it's quite a subtle donut. Some of those purple colours or hues blend together for me. Are you able to differentiate between them very easily? Because it's kind of the ones either side of other. Really, it's quite subtle, the difference between remote working, time with family, and no commute. They're very close.
I agree. They're difficult to differentiate.
So I think what I would do is, it's perfectly fine to stay with purple as your colour. Try to make a selection that's mixes the scale up a little bit more, so it's a bit more pronounced. And this for me feels like it's one where we have got too many icons. So it's difficult to make icons which directly relate to what the response categories are. So like the other one got 3 dots. The flexible schedule, this hand and the clock, it's a bit vague. So I'd probably lose the icons, because the icons aren't helping me to understand what it is I'm having to look at the label. So I don't think there's any point in the icon being there. I think it would simplify it, just losing those. And I don't know what your thoughts are on the images either side of the title, but again, it's just a woman sat with a laptop.
Yeah, and then the image in the middle is this like black and white, what do they call them, clip arts in old Microsoft speak. So I think this is one where there's a bit of like no harmony between the different elements. And I think that could definitely be simplified. It doesn't have to be a bar chart all the time. And what could even help is, if you want to stick to those colors, just giving it white borders so we see more clearly where one wedge ends and the next one starts. And like Charlie said, when you drop those icons around it, making just those labels a bit clearer.
Yeah, I don't think you need, if you strip a lot of this stuff away, so lots of the unnecessary icons and stuff, I think it'll actually be very, very crisp and clean. So a few little changes, and I think that would come on quite a lot.
Yeah, and I think the wording of those labels needs to be updated because it's not really correct. Remote working offers 30% flexible schedule. No, it doesn't. The flexible schedule is what 32% of respondents like about remote working. So if you turn it into a sentence, make sure that is a correct sentence or a correct conclusion. Okay. Moving away from lots of purple to something that's just monochrome from Agatha. And I know that she is tuned in. So hi, Agatha. I'm not actually sure where she's based, but hopefully it's not too early in her morning. And the Flex Life, which at first made me think of like gym stuff, weight lifting, but it is a title that was in the article, so I'm guessing that's where she picked it from.
So I lose track of stuff and who like the original source of inspiration is. So like earlier we had the one that was definitely inspired by Samo. Is this Judith Becker inspired, do you think, or people just merge together in my perception of things, but I don't know who the original author of stuff that looks like this is, but I thank them so much because I think this is just, if I can ever create something that looks so neat and crisp and organized, I'm going to just retire and I don't know, go on holiday somewhere cooler, because I just think it's so nice. And this is Mr. Grumpy likes bar charts, and I know it's not conventional, but the fact that we've got the label on there mitigates the fact that it's not just a bar chart. So it's just cool. There's the parameters, so you can flip between the different responses and see what's going on. I just think it's really, really good.
Yeah, I agree. It's really nice. And it's just, I don't really have much to criticize. One thing, maybe if it isn't obvious to people, just a comment of, out of 100% of the respondents, so that people don't feel like, oh, do I have to now count the dots to be sure that she did the math right? But rather just to say something that, or put in somewhere, out of the total respondents. I mean, it should be obvious, but I'm just playing devil's advocate here. And Agatha said she is in Portland, Maine, which is also where Jonathan Drummey, 10 Blues and Master Hall of Fame, lives and hangs out. So a cool place to be.
But yeah, it's just a very, very nice viz. So thank you for sharing it, and please keep doing stuff that's that good, and maybe eventually it will rub off on me and I'll start doing nicer stuff.
Excellent. And I see that Andy is still tuned in and that he's responding to some questions about Makeover Monday, which is great as well. So then we have Hayley Kim, and we have a rounded bar chart, but we also have a really giant kind of prominent image, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that, whether you find that distracting or like it, does it add, does it distract?
I think, yeah, so it's integrated nicely, so it's kind of like a seamless thing. So the way the bars are over the top of the image is really, really nicely done. So it looks kind of like something you could see in a magazine. So the way in which Hayley's done it, I think it's been done very creatively with a clear, like, just quality level of design nous. But I think the thing that I look at it and just think this is kind of something which is intended to be in a magazine, so I can put aside my reservations about the size of the image. I think the thing that bugs me perhaps is that, so we've got benefits and struggles again. It just makes more sense to me, and this is similar to the earlier one we had. I'd rather see the benefits going left to right rather than right to left, because it just feels like the wrong direction to travel. Mm-hmm. So you'd almost have it's almost like a butterfly chart, which is sorted in descending order. So I'd rather see the main benefit running from left to right, and then the greatest struggle at the bottom of the pile running from sort of center to left, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would probably put a very heavily transparent, so maybe, I don't know, 20% opacity white blank on top of the image, because to me the data needs to pop out more, and for that the image needs to go more into the background. No, I'm no designer, but that's what I would do. Maybe something to consider. And I noticed that the fonts, I don't mind if the big fonts I think can be more playful or different. It's good that the smaller fonts are not, but they all look bold maybe. I think maybe a bit of a lighter font but larger could work. Just something to consider. And what do you think about the color gradient for those rounded bars? Do you think they should all be just white instead?
Possibly, because at the bottom where you've got like loneliness and collaboration and communication at the bottom, you almost lose them in the image. And it's difficult because that image itself has got that natural scale from dark at the bottom through to the sort of sunset or sunrise, whatever it is. So yeah, it's a difficult one. It would be hard to find a colour which stands out enough throughout that whole range of colours. But yeah, I'd probably lose the shading that it's got at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. And to our lovely audience, so there have been a couple of comments that people liked the demo and seeing, the color picker and changing the colors in that previous viz. And there was a Tableau specific questions about fonts on Tableau Public. So basically, there are fonts that Tableau Public has by default, but if you use a very special font and the person looking at it has that font installed, they will see it, as far as I know. But if they don't have it installed, it's going to default to one of the safe fonts that Tableau have on Tableau Public. I still kind of rebel against it. I kind of just use whatever font I like, because I figure most people will only look at the image anyway. Hardly anyone, at least for my visitors, because they're quite simple, they're not going to go to Tableau Public and take them apart because nothing's spectacular. But if you build something more intricate, so a lot of people, what they do is if they really want the font to stick, is they actually create an image of the title in PowerPoint and stick that on their viz.
Yeah, it's a shame. There's probably a very good technical reason behind it, but it just bugs me that your font shifts. But Rodrigo's the one to go on about that. That's his battle.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is by Carolyn. Oh. I think Carolyn changed her name. Sure, because it was Carolyn Pearson. So, congratulations, possibly, not for changing your name, but maybe getting married. I'm making some assumptions here. But if not, please do feel free to correct me. Remote working, what is the biggest benefit? So, I like the title because it's very clear. And biggest benefit, the word big is then reflected in the biggest chunk of the bar as well. So, big benefit, flexible schedule. I would, in the text, because she's taken the time to actually spell it out, maybe just make that a bit more obvious, that it is the flexible schedule, because I have to read pretty much every word because it doesn't really stand out. What do you think, Charlie?
So I've got three things I've seen. So the most minor one is at the bottom where the source is in blue. I find it really, really hard to read that text. So I'd probably just align that source and just not have it as a hyperlink. Just cite. You could just make a URL linky thing without the hyperlink, and that would stand out more. The two things that are more important are the text that's under the title is really fragmented. It kind of looks like it's just a bunch of different sentences that are being picked up and stuck on a screen. They just don't flow together. There's no clear relationship between them. So I'd rather it was constructed in a way that feels more like a single piece of text rather than a few bits dotted around. And then on the right-hand side, it's just an observation of actually it's slightly strange to see stuff sorted in ascending order rather than descending, and particularly when the framing of it is what is the biggest benefit. I'd almost expect that biggest benefit to be at the top, unless you want to lead us through that story and say the biggest boom is this flexible schedule.
Yeah, agreed with that. I have been thinking back and forth about should it be at the bottom because it's kind of logical, but also, what's the biggest benefit? Should it be at the same height as that title? So maybe just something to play with. Okay. How are you for time, Charlie? Because I'm just conscious it's 5:00, but if you're good, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, cool. We're not going to get kicked out. Oh, hang on. Let me just go back to that. And there was a question about, if you're not getting reviewed, are you eligible for favorites? You absolutely are. the one thing we ask for is that you include a picture in your tweet, not just the hyperlink, because we use TweetDeck to like manage the deluge of visitors, and it's so much easier to have a quick glance when we see a picture, because otherwise we have to click through every single link, because it doesn't do a preview in TweetDeck. So please, if you want to be considered for the favorites, make sure you always post a picture so that we easily, because otherwise we also have to download your image and upload it to the blog and all that stuff.
I've had, probably at least 5 examples this year of really nice GIFs where I've not included them in favorites just because of that faff. So if you're very keen to be a favorite, it has to be a picture.
Yeah, and you can always like put a picture, put the link in, put a GIF in the next tweet, whatever you want to do, but just make sure there's always a picture, because then we can just copy the link to the picture into our blog. We don't need to, clog up our website space with downloads of pictures. That's just FYI. So, this is by Shivam Mittal. Remote work might be the new normal. I'd be a bit hesitant because there are lots of people who can't actually work remotely. And I think this just kind of seems like a generalization that it would apply to everyone. So maybe just something to... Maybe even remote work might be the new normal for a large part of the workforce, or something just to make sure that people understand it's not for everyone.
So this chart's got maybe an issue with consistency. So we've talked about this earlier today with consistent use of color and tying stuff. So we've got lots of words in the subtitle picked out in the dark blue, which is the same as the ability to have a flexible schedule. Top category, but they don't all necessarily directly relate to that, so it feels a bit misleading to perhaps colour it the same way. But other than that, this bar chart way of doing it was the way I had it with my first shot at it today, because I quite like these sort of dual axis bar charts, because it just lets you see what's that maximum extent of 100% look like. So I think the only changes I would consider making are just general font ones. So the subtitle's a bit sketchy to me, but it's probably on my screen. It just looks... There's actually a bit too much space between the title, the subtitle, and then the subtitle. I don't know what the second subtitle's called. And then just the font to the left of the bars is a little bit small. So I think it's just a little bit of polish that this one needs.
Yes, and a couple of... there's a typo, so it should be biggest benefit, not benefit. And one such question in the survey, so it's missing the. Apart from that, I think there's lots of space. It's pretty clean, and I like that the bars go to 100%. So we just see that 32 is the biggest, but it's not 90% or something. So that's really good. Okay. Then we have Kelly, and here we have our first radial circular bar. Oh, hang on, there is no... Let me see if the link is in the second tweet. So click on that. Okay, Kelly 10. And let's make this nice and large for everyone to see on my apparently ginormous screen. Top benefits of remote working. Okay, so there's a bit of an intro. Now, I remember when these started, these rounded circular bar charts, and I have to admit, I'm not a big fan, because they're just so hard to interpret. I mean, all I do is I go back to the number that's next to the words, and I use that, because I can't really compare the length of these rounded bars. What do you think? Yeah,
these are the sort of charts that I get irrationally irritated by, because I do think they're utterly dependent on the quality of the labelling for you to actually be able to read it. And logically, it makes no sense to me to have something that's a 32% value, but that is covering 75% of the distance around the circle. So I would almost expect that first value to be 75%, because I expect it to be almost like a portion of a pie. So there's some argument that they look good visually, which I'm a bit on the fence about, but this is one where I've just straightened those bars, and I know it's very predictable, and then maybe they might not look so fancy, but I do genuinely think that these always create an obstacle to reading things quickly. So yeah, it's not my chart choice, but if if it's just a learning exercise for Kelly, then hopefully she'd learn not to use it again.
Yeah, and I think also it's at first glance I'm like, oh, what is this? There's color and there's round bits, and humans like round things. We like bubbles and circles in general. I just think when it comes to communicating information, sure, there are more effective choices. So that just is, I guess it's our duty to educate, right?
Yeah. But and then the huge 98% again. So I know this was in the article, but when I saw it, and I saw a few early visits, I saw this 98% referenced alongside the responses, and you immediately assume that 98% relates to that chart, and it doesn't. So I'd just be mindful about, actually, is it particularly relevant to include that when we're actually just focusing on people's favourable responses to working from home?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, then we have another chart that we haven't had before. I promised I would make a nice cross-section or cross-selection of the various charts we had. So this is from Owen Barnes, also a name I haven't really come across yet. So let me zoom in. The benefits of working from home. Nice, succinct, clear title. Then talks a little bit about the study. And it's basically a waffle chart, but the non-colored waffles are the same as the background, so they're not visible, but you can discover them if you hover. But it looks like the total is not 100%. The total is probably about 50% because the 32, the labels are right inside the waffle. Okay, I see now. What do you think?
So I think it's a little sigh then. So I was a bit confused. So even with a standard waffle where you've got the sort of the data that you're not wanting to show, but you've still got it in the background so you can see the light grey or whatever it might be. The waffle charts in that case always relied on this labelling in the centre for you to actually truly understand what's the precise number I'm looking at. So it's good that Owen's included those there, but I feel like this misses out from not having that shadow of what's the data you're not plotting here, because you don't get that sense of, so what is 100%? So like you said, you can hover over and find these little squares. But I feel that you would be better off actually being able to see them. It feels a bit, feels like half a chart.
I agree. And Andy commented that Owen is in data school cohort 21 that just started recently. So good luck with that, Owen. But yeah, I agree. If at least we had some sort of sense of outline, just a very light outline of these empty boxes, I think that would help. And also the labels below, they're really big and prominent, and I find when it's all caps for multiple words, it makes it quite hard to read. So yeah, I would simplify that a bit. And your credentials are actually hidden under the information icon, and given that most people see these visits as images, they wouldn't ever click on that, so make sure that you have your credentials so people know who created this. Okay, I'm zooming out. I do have a big screen, I do notice. Okay, next up is Henny. I'm going to bring this up, and Charlie, I have to quickly get a drink because I am melting, so I'm going to let you start talking about this.
That's all right, very slowly.
Wait for half a minute to fill up my bottle.
Okay. So Henny has done us some tree maps. So we've got on the left-hand side, what are the reported benefits of working from home, and on the right-hand side, what are the reported struggles. And so everybody knows what a tree map is, basically like a pie chart in a sense, but in a more sort of readable format in many ways. So we can see that on the benefits side, that the flexible schedule is the dominant value, down to other with just 3%. And the thing that I like about the viz is we've got these two separate sides, so they're distinct and separate, but it also causes me some challenges. So on the benefits side, the colours are largely the same on all the different sections of the tree map. So it's kind of fine because they're labelled and you can see the percentages, but when we go to the struggles side, the coloring's a little bit more varied. So it just feels like it's at odds with the left-hand side of the chart. And I also find I can kind of see why the struggles side has been placed a little bit higher, but and I know they're 100% and they're different sides of a different set of questioning, but I'd still rather see them aligned so you've got both tree maps in sync, because it would just look a lot more balanced, because at the moment it looks like the benefits have slipped down the page and the struggles have jumped up a little bit. So I think I'd sort that balance out, and I would just look to see, is there a use of colour within the tree map on the left-hand side I can do, which feels more consistent with what we've got on the struggle side.
Yeah, I agree with what I heard. Is the bottom kind of cut off for you on the right side? Because I
can't see.
The words seem to be covered by the dark blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's move on to the next ones. I'm just conscious we still have a lot. We probably can't. We might be able to, depending on how much time we have, or you have. But I'm glad we have a bit more flexibility now. This is cool.
Yeah. No, let's crack on. Maybe we'll just, like, if we've got duplicate waffles, we'll ditch that and we'll just go for the new stuff.
So I know this is another bar chart, but it's a bit of a different style from Kathy, and I thought, so she's picked up the colors of the original image to bring in, or I think the image or the bars. What is the top benefit of remote work? I would suggest to maybe change it. What are the top benefits? Because there's actually 5 specific ones listed. And I mean, otherwise it should just be flexible schedule if it's just the top benefit, because it was the highest ranked. But just something to think about. What do you think of these bars? Because you're the master of bar charts.
Well, so the bar's totally cool, and I think this is one where we've got the balance of using an icon and a label right. So we've had a few examples today where the icons to relate to the categories have been pretty big, or they're just taking up too much space, or they're unnecessary because the label's already there. Here the icons are small, so they're not distracting. They are secondary to the words that are actually within the bars themselves, so they're not obtrusive because of that, but they still act as that almost secondary reinforcement of what the category is. And I think that's the balance that people sometimes get wrong when they're trying to overlay labels as well as icons on stuff. So I think this is a good example of how you can subtly incorporate an icon without it being too in your face.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, I like it. Okay. Oh, I keep zooming in and out, but I just don't want to have it all messed up. So then we have Swati, who did like, who said that she likes working in sweatpants, and I think I asked her, I'm like, someone else talked about pajamas, because I don't like being up in pajamas, but but sweatpants I can totally understand, or just kind of running shorts or something. Now, Swati has great design skills, and she's consistently produces great work. The one thing I'm missing here is the data, because all I really see is the image. I love that she's picked up the color from the image, but I think the data gets a bit lost on the right side. It's almost like it's about the image, but then the data was kind of stuck there. And I wish it was a bit more blended together.
Yeah, it's similar to the earlier one with the really big image and the bars on the right-hand side. I think there's a lot of nice design skill, and it's being far more creative than me incorporating all these different elements. But and again, you could see it would be in certain publications and it would be fine, because maybe they're not necessarily, this is a bad word, but I'll use it, maybe they're not terribly serious, like journals. So it might be just some coffee table magazine talking about something. You could see it in there where it's not a terribly serious study of something. So I think it's fine, but yeah, like you say, the data is pretty pushed into the background.
Mm-hmm. Aside from that, I think the bar chart, I mean, it's a bit narrow and tall given the limitations of the space. I think they could be a bit more, like it could be a bit longer. Because it's just really hard to see the difference between 7 and 3%, but also 32 and 26. They're just not that pronounced because the bars are so short. So just something to keep in mind. Okay. And then, so we have donuts again. Should we skip that one, or do you want to go for it?
I think we can skip it because, again, it's 6 donuts. And so we've talked about, does it make sense to show the same thing 6 times rather than in one?
And I think the next one is basically a little bit like Kathy's, but it's rotated. So we'll skip that one as well. But then we have Tamabao. Well, that's the Twitter handle, but it looks a bit like a tree map with a stacked bar or something. Let's check this one out.
That.
Okay, so this looks to be like all the benefits were categorized again, and then put into things. And again, here the colors of the image have been picked up. So again, it makes it look a bit more harmonious overall.
So
people
just instinctively
feel
calling. So at the top we've got like a different size font for work-life balance, which just feels a bit weird. So I would just make sure they were aligned size-wise. And it just feels like there's quite a bit of duplication here, because this bubble charts have got plenty of problems. We don't really need a bubble chart. So yeah, there's a convenient space down here because there's an icon there, or an image. If the image wasn't there, you wouldn't have the bubble chart there, frankly, because you've just created yourself a white space problem by putting it there. So I would lose that. And then the categories for the first stack bar, but they weren't actually in the data, were they? There must have been some extra classification that's gone on just to create this viz. Is that right? Because
I would think so, because I haven't seen that either.
And I just wonder what, again, like I said very early on, lots of these things merge into one, because you can argue that this benefit drives this other benefit, and things merge together. So I don't think we can really categorize things this clearly. It's a very long answer to saying I just do a bar chart.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in terms of, the colors, I don't have an issue with that, given that the image reflects those colors, but a bit of tidying up, making it simpler, formatting your tooltips if you want to keep them, but also, like Charlie said in the title, make that color, the font consistent, but also the color of the font. And then the subtitle, people don't really feel, I guess they feel the benefits, but that's not what the survey was about. It's, what do they say are the benefits for them? And also making sure to include the data source and your credentials, and also where you got the image from.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're gonna be, okay, 2 more. The next one is Unmesh, and it is a bar chart, but it also has like some other elements. So I think we can have a look at that. Looks like there's something a bit funky with the alignment of the text. Makeover man. Yeah, there's a few things cut off. I wonder if it's floating elements or what's going on there, but something to look into in Mesh.
Yeah, it's a bit funky on mine. So I think the thing that I want to do with this one is contrast it with what we had from Agatha earlier on. So if we think about this same board around the edge, I can't remember, what's it called? A plum pie chart, I think I've seen, or plum pudding chart.
Plum pudding, yeah.
Yeah, so if we think about how subtle and just clean that viz was, and then contrast it with this, and it just needs paring back a little bit to have that same sort of quality feel that Agatha's had. So we've got quite bright colors, we've got quite a chunky bar chart in there, and then this issue with some floating stuff doing some funky things. I think I'd look at Agatha's work and see actually what subtle things has she done that I can incorporate into this. And yeah, that's about all I can suggest.
Yeah, I don't know if I really have much to add, but I would suggest to also not put the credentials at the top. That is your prime real estate on the page, and it's, sorry to say, but that's the least important or interesting part. People want to look at the data, they want to see what's the story, what's your insights. Put all that stuff at the bottom, and then you have more focus for your data. Okay, last one is from Avinash, and here I want to hear your opinion, Charlie, on whether I've seen a few vizzes where images were used, kind of blended together. Do you think that works?
I think it's another one of these things where it could be fine in certain publications. I think, if I were to do it, I'd make a couple of changes. So this, I can't even remember the name of the things, but the little work from home thing in the top right that keeps blinking, that's a distraction. So I'd bin that, because that's just, it doesn't need to be there. And I think I would just shrink the size of the chart. So I'd have some padding to just create some white space around the outside, because it's so stretched out within that laptop screen. So if I were to persist with having a laptop image in the background, I'd at least give it a bit of breathing room within that sort of framework.
Yeah, and one thing that's really important, and I know it sounds quite picky, let me actually zoom in so people see this more easily. Top right corner, you can tell that this is a picture stuck on, or the viz is stuck onto the background, because it slightly overlaps, so it's not perfectly within the white inside of the screen. So just making sure that doesn't happen, so that it does look like it's all meant to be together.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've gone through the slides. Let me just do a bit of tidy up here. We'll close that. We'll go back to that, but I'm also going to bring us back. So we're back on the screen, Charlie.
What?
We are. But we look, I think, still the same. Still sweaty. I'm constantly just anyhow. So I would love for people to comment maybe below the video what they with a bit of feedback. Try to be constructive, as we try to be as well. But also, once we post this on Twitter, give us a bit of what you thought. And I think the general consensus I got was, YouTube is the better option. It's more accessible. I think, Charlie, you found this better as well?
I think so. It's a bit less faff from our perspective. And I think if we can go back and add some comments afterwards, I think it will just help reinforce a bit of that commenting bit. So it's far more active than Bright Talk. So hopefully more people will benefit from it.
Absolutely. I think it goes along the lines of the typical Twitter interactions that people have. So that's been very fun to watch and to see you guys all chatting. So from here, this is going to be available on demand very shortly. Andy will sort that out. And then what I want to ask people is that, because for favorites, it's always nice to see people having done something following our feedback. But because I'm going on holiday on Friday, I would like to kind of ask people to do it all kind of by end of Thursday, so I can do this, do my recap and my favorites as early as possible on Friday before I go away, because I'm not going to take my computer with me. That would be appreciated. And so this live stream, I think it's the same URL every time, if I'm not mistaken, but anyway, it's going to be on Andy's channel. You can find it there, so make sure you subscribe and switch on the notifications so you are alerted to when this stuff happens. But we will post it on Twitter, and for now the Bright Talk webinars are just there as placeholders, so we don't get penalized if we delete them. But once they have all expired, it's going to be just here. So Bright Talk you don't have to worry about anymore. I think we're good now with YouTube. Anything else, Charlie? Any last words of wisdom?
No, I've got just to say that my data for this week will probably come out early, and my favourites will be late because I'm on holiday too. So bear with the disruption, but then I'll change my desk after that.
Okie dokie. That sounds all good. I'm just trying to see if there's any more questions. Yes, Pavan says it's more intuitive and flexible compared to Bright Talk. Thanks for the feedback. Yeah, great to have you all. I think this has been really fun. I like that it's a bit more relaxed and interactive. So we're going to close out here, and I have to just make sure I keep this running until it's all caught up on the actual live stream as well. So thanks again, Charlie, as usual. We'll finish it here. I'll bring up the closing slides, and then hopefully everyone else has a great day and has fun iterating on their visits.
Cool. See you later.
Okay, bye.